Good morning. Yesterday, I talked about how the upcoming lunar month from February 9th through March 10th could affect the world in general. And today, I want to talk about its impact on particular countries and people. So let's see if I can share my screen here. Okay, I just need to get rid of a few panels so that I can see what I'm doing here. So bear with me for a second. Okay. And now I think I'm ready to go. So this is the lunar month for countries and people. And I'll talk somewhat briefly, see if I can go through this quickly as I talk about America, Biden, Trump, Israel, Hamas, Iran, and Putin. February 9th through March 10th. Okay, now the chart I like to use for America is a July 2nd, 1776 chart for the passage of the Resolution for Independence. But everything I say, it's going to apply to pretty much all those other July 1776 charts that uh, people might use for America. Okay, and I'm going to follow kind of a standard format in this video. First, I'll show you the chart of a country or person. Then I'll show you a bi-wheel where that chart is on the inside. And the transits at the time of the full moon are on the outside. That's the midway point of the lunar month. So those aspects which are most important will usually be marked here. And actually on this chart, I marked just the planetary aspects that will be producing some tension, but then that will be followed by a graph like this, which shows important transits throughout the month, both the tense ones, conjunctions, squares, and oppositions, and the easy ones like trines and sextiles. And I'll do that for each of the charts that I'm going over. So for America, the main thing we have going on this month is something that's going to be continuing through for quite a while throughout the year. We have transiting Chiron in the North Node, making oppositions and conjunctions with natal Saturn and Chiron. So transiting Chiron is moving direct now, and before too long, actually in April, it's going to come into conjunction with natal Chiron. That is going to be a Chiron return, and we have two Chiron returns in 2024 and a third one for America in early 2025. I've talked about that in more detail in other videos I've made. But for now, let me suffice it to say that we usually get some political wounding at this time. Uh, and we've been going through this for a while. And we also get some political transcendence, usually during this period. On an individual level, for Americans, this is a great time for responding to the higher aspects of Chiron. The real nature of Chiron is it urges us towards spiritual transcendence, to go beyond the visible world to the less visible spiritual realm, to go beyond just what we can see. And with Chiron in Aries, which is more about the person, the individual, I suspect and I feel that there are a lot of Americans out there who are seeking some sort of individual spirituality and spiritual experience. And this year is going to be a great time for them to make those leaps forward, even if there is some wounding going on in other areas of the country. Now, the lunar nodes, they're almost always moving in what we would call a retrograde fashion, in the opposite direction of the planets most of the time. And so This spring, we'll have the lunar nodal axis coming into conjunction with natal Saturn. It's been in conjunction before in the past year. And when that happens, it intensifies the meaning of Saturn. And it also uh, means that payment will come due on our past debts of all sorts, so to speak. This is a moment when we have to deal with our karma and the results of our past actions. And we sometimes see this manifesting in terms of mass shootings, and a lot of the time in terms of climate change events, as well as political wounding. So, in other words, America has been going through a critical period from transits like this and some other transits. The whole notion of our democracy has been challenged, and we're still going to be going through some more stuff. We're still in the process of hopefully healing and repairing our democracy and our ideals. Uh, so we've still got more stuff to go through this month and beyond. But if we are kind to others, if every person does the best they can to be their best selves, then we can have a good outcome to everything. Now, the other thing going on, which causes tension, is Saturn is squaring Uranus. And Saturn is usually restriction, regulation, frustration. With Saturn in Pisces, this also represents visions that people are trying to make concrete. But Uranus is disruptive. It breaks up the existing pattern. It's in Gemini, which rules the mind. That can be mental creativity. It can also be people just being very vocal and very reactionary, very revolutionary. So we're probably going to continue to see people protesting about various things, this and that, people revolting here and there, and maybe some problems with infrastructure. Okay, now if we look at all the major transits, well, let's see, here we have Saturn square Uranus. It's going to be exact on February 20th. And it lasts throughout pretty much all of this lunar month, which goes from about February 10th to, or I think I said February 9th to March 10th. Okay. And the opposition of the lunar north node with Saturn, or the conjunction of that nodal axis with Saturn, uh, it starts to gain steam after mid-February. And it's going to continue to increase in intensity throughout the rest of the lunar month and into the next lunar month. And will probably be exact sometime in April. Now, fortunately, we have a lot of good aspects, good transits to America's chart uh, this lunar month, and that is going to help ameliorate, lessen some of the difficulties we see here. Okay. And in particular, let's see, we have Neptune making some very good aspects. Transing Neptune will sextile the moon, trine Mercury, and sextile Pluto. And combined, that is going to be in effect throughout the entire lunar month. So Neptune gives people hope, it gives people vision and compassion. So the whole month isn't going to be bad. Also, we have Jupiter making a sextile to the sun. It's exact on the 29th of February. That is going to be in effect throughout a lot of this lunar month. And that is really going to make people feel good and bring some prosperity to America. Saturn trine the sun, that starts in the latter part of February and is exact right after the beginning of the next lunar month on March 11th. And Saturn is going to here represent beneficial discipline, control, and regulation. So, good regulation is going to help make America stronger. And Jupiter and Saturn, as transing planets, they're making a sextile to one another throughout this month. So, there's going to be a very nice balance between growth and regulation, and America is going to feel that and benefit from it. And we also have, as mentioned, that Chiron return. Uh, it looks like that is going to start taking effect in middle of March, and it will become exact in April, particularly I think on April 20th. Okay, so in a nutshell, America, we're still going through some wounding, particularly politically. Uh, we're still having to face the consequences of our past actions. We're still struggling throughout this year to right the ship of state and restore our democracy. Uh, but that's an ongoing process, and there are some very good aspects this month which will help people feel better, even though there are going to be some revolutionaries out there and some people protesting. Keep an eye around February 20th. See what happens with this Saturn square Uranus. Okay. And by the way, also keep an eye on the 29th when that sextile from Jupiter to the Sun becomes exact. That could be a really good feel good day. Now, here's Joe Biden's chart. If you want to pause the video, copy down the date and time, that's fine. But let's look at the transits being made on the full moon, the ones causing some tension. Now, the one which concerns me the most is Pluto square the moon. That looks very ominous. And the moon is the ruler of his eighth house of death and transformation. The moon rules Cancer. Now, the good thing about Joe Biden is that he is a very balanced and mature individual. He's gone through a lot of adversity in life, and he's grown from it. He's learned how to handle challenges. He's learned how to deal with struggles and disappointments that would be too much for many other people. He is often able to stay in balance even when there are negative transits going on. So, uh, more often than not, no matter what the transit is, you tend to see the best possible outcome for him. But he is getting older, and eventually, all of us have our luck run out. So, I'll talk about I don't know exactly what was going to happen, but I will talk about worst possible outcomes and better possible outcomes. And obviously, the worst possible outcome of Pluto square moon would be death. Another uh, outcome could be some sort of severe illness. Certainly, I expect him to be under a lot of mental stress at this point, but the good news is he's used to that. And historically, he has handled these kinds of stresses very well. Now, the moon is in his fifth house. It rules children. And last year, I think it was in May, Pluto came close to this square to his natal moon without ever becoming exact. But what happened during that time was Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden. The legal problems of Hunter Biden were in the news. And so this may be what happens this time. We certainly have seen so far that the Republicans would like to make a spectacle of Hunter Biden throughout the year and try and use that to uh, erode support for President Joe Biden. And of course, when his son is suffering, uh, I expect that he suffers also. So Pluto square the moon, that is going to be in effect throughout the year within a 2-degree orb, and there could be dire consequences, but I'm hoping for the best. Now, we also have, right now, we have transiting Saturn, square natal Saturn. Uh, Saturn is our drive to control and regulate ourselves, but it's often experienced as a frustration and blockages to growth, make it harder to get things done. So this month he has to be extra disciplined in order to accomplish things. We also have Jupiter making an opposition to Mars. Mars is in his 12th house, which, among other things, rules hidden enemies and self undoing. Jupiter, by the time this opposition is exact, Jupiter will be in the 6th house, which has to do with health. Uh, One of the worst case scenarios would be some sort of physical attack, but I'm not expecting that to happen. The president is well protected. Uh, it would be more likely that he gets stabbed in the back, figuratively speaking, by other politicians who try and create scandals and other trouble for him. It's also possible, since Jupiter is our drive to grow and expand, it increases things. Mars is our drive to engage in activity, to assert ourselves, to be active. So, another possibility is he might get a little too exuberant, have an accident of some sort, trip, fall down the stairs again, or uh, fall off a bicycle or whatever. Okay. Now, transing Uranus is in opposition to his natal Mercury. Transing Uranus is in the 6th house. Mercury is in his 12th house of self undoing, hidden enemies, and all sorts of other things. So, uh, Uranus in opposition to Mercury by itself, that tends to make one a little bit more excited, a little bit more hyper. There could be some health problem that comes up, or something else of an unexpected nature. So, in a nutshell, Pluto square moon, that is going to be in effect throughout most of the year. So, it will probably be a very intense year for President Biden. Some of the other transits I see here are going to be a little bit more fleeting. He's probably going to be very focused on things, particularly relationships with other countries this month. Uh, because Saturn is squaring natal Saturn. Saturn has to do with control and focus and concentration. Other things going on, I'm not too terribly worried about. And here is the graph for the month. You can see Pluto square moon, that is going to become exact on February 21st. Saturn square Saturn, that is exact on March 1st. And Jupiter in opposition to Mars will be exact on March 8th, right before the beginning of the next lunar month. So these are particular dates to keep in mind and watch to see what happens with President Biden around these dates. Now, the good news is he has lots of good aspects going on, and that's going to help reduce the tension. He's got a lot of good aspects from Neptune that is going to help with his personal magnetism. You can see a lot of the good aspects, the blue lines, they become exact at various times during March. But assisting with all these tensions, he has Pluto trine Neptune, Neptune trine Sun, Neptune trine Jupiter, Uranus trine his midheaven. That is going to be very good for his status. He also has Pluto trine Uranus, Pluto sextile is ascendant. That's good for his personal stamina and strength. And Saturn trine Mars. So, a lot of good stuff going on. But again, it's that Pluto square moon, which will stay within 2 degrees of exact throughout the year and become exact at various times in the year. That's uh, the aspect that concerns me the most. I'll keep an eye on that and those dates. Now, as for Donald Trump, well, if we look at his transits at the time of the new moon as being kind of representative of the lunar month, there's some stuff going on that's been going on for a while. He has transiting Chiron. It's turned direct. It's soon going to be in direct opposition to his natal Jupiter. Before that, it was getting close to an opposition to his natal Chiron. Uh, the North Node, the North Lunar Node, it tends to generally move retrograde. So it's moving toward that exact opposition with natal Chiron. The lunar nodal axis always intensifies things. And Chiron, in Trump's case, usually brings about wounding. And we have seen him wounded quite a bit legally over the past year. And as Chiron goes into opposition to his Jupiter, we may see his luck run out and his legal problems increase since Jupiter is also connected with the law. And that is emphasized this month also by a square between transiting Jupiter and natal Pluto. Pluto rules his fourth house, which is typically the home, but in Trump's case, uh, it's not only his home and family, but also the family business. His real estate business is his home in many ways. And with Pluto, the ruler of his fourth house and the 12th house, he likes to keep a lot of that secret, a lot of it hidden. But with Jupiter square Pluto, that probably represents legal action, which is going to bring a lot of these secrets out into the open. Okay, now let's see when some aspects become exact. Let's see, it looks like Chiron will be in exact opposition to Jupiter on March 5th. So keeping an eye on his luck around that time. Um, Chiron opposition natal Chiron is waning. North node in opposition to Jupiter. Well, that's going to start waning for a while. And let's see, let me go back, look at this. Oh, yes. The north node is at 16 degrees, so it's moving back toward the opposition with Chiron. That'll be later. And Chiron's moving direct, so it's moving toward that opposition with Jupiter, which becomes exact on the 5th. Now, the square of Jupiter to his natal Pluto, that becomes exact on February 22nd. So, again, keep an eye out for news about Trump. And the North Node in opposition to natal Chiron. Here you can see it's going to start increasing intensity and it will become exact at a future date. Now, Trump also has some trines and sextiles going on, which will help counter some of these more negative influences and bring him some luck. Chiron will be sextile his Uranus on the 13th. That is probably going to help enhance his status since he has natal Uranus in the 10th house. Chiron is usually the sweet transcendent energy. Uh, and when it's working in Trump's favor, it can make him look a little bit more saintly than he actually is. Uh, let's see, the North Node will be making a sextile to Uranus, that's actually fading. Neptune trine his Venus, that has really been enhancing his charisma, his appeal. That's still going strong, but it's going to start waning, and then its influence will disappear sometime during the following lunar month. Jupiter sextile Mercury, that is going to be exact on February 14th, and Saturn trine Mercury will be exact on the 21st. And so uh, there might be some good things happening for Trump around these times. And it's interesting that Saturn trine Mercury is exact a day before Jupiter square Pluto. In astrology, it's not always like you mix hot water and cold water and get lukewarm water. It's more like a tossed salad. We got the good stuff and the bad stuff all together, mixed up together in the same salad. So you can have good news and bad news at pretty much the same time. Now, I want to show you just something real quick about Trump's chart. Notice he has Neptune at 5 degrees Libra, and he has Chiron at 14 degrees Libra. If we go back to this July 2nd chart for America, oh, I gotta go all the way back here. Here we are. Trump's Neptune is at 5 degrees Libra. This chart has 7 degrees Libra rising. And certainly we have seen Trump as having the ability to mesmerize, to hypnotize large segments of the country. Uh, but he has Chiron at 14 degrees Libra, which is where Saturn is in this USA chart. And if we think of Chiron as wounding, Saturn as structure, in particular, the structure of our democracy and the structure of our relationships with other countries, since Saturn's in Libra, I can think of no one who has done more to damage American democracy and our relationships with other countries than Donald Trump. So, uh, what will happen? We will see. Okay, now let's see. Next, let's move on to Israel. Here I have Israel's chart, and at the time of the moon, transiting Uranus, it's moving direct again. And before long, it's going to be an exact opposition to natal Chiron. And then later on, it will be an exact conjunction with uh, the natal sun. And it's also uh, still within about 5 degrees of conjunction with the lunar nodal axis. That just intensifies everything. Now, at the time of uh, the attack by Hamas on Israel, Saturn was stimulating the Sun Chiron conjunction. I've talked about that in greater detail in some other videos I've made. Uh, but at that time, transiting Uranus was about at 22 degrees Taurus, just in between exact conjunction with the Sun, exact opposition with natal Chiron. And that brought forth a lot of sudden wounding. Well, uh, there are a lot of astrological configurations that were present at the time of that attack that are going to be repeating themselves this spring, particularly around the time of the April 8th solar eclipse. And this is one of them. Uranus is going to be moving back into the same position it was during that attack. So there are a lot of signs that there's a definite possibility that tensions could increase in the Middle East. There's a lot of danger that this could expand into a wider war. That doesn't have to happen. And the good news is diplomats today are a lot better than they were, say, around 100 years ago or around the time of World War One. So hopefully cooler heads can lessen the tensions, prevent a wider war, but astrologically, there are astrological things which are going to be sort of pushing us in that direction, but we don't have to go in that direction. Okay, so the effect of transiting Uranus, that is stirring things up with Israel again. Transiting Neptune is square Jupiter. Uh, this could correspond to misinformation that's going on and also confusion about what's going on and subterfuge, people working in the shadows to sabotage things. So another thing to keep an eye on, transiting Saturn, square Mercury. There could be some frustrating news for Israel this month. Jupiter square natal Pluto. Um, let's see, Pluto in the 10th house. I think this, more than anyone else, this represents Netanyahu as the head of the government. And with Jupiter in the 7th house, which represents other people, in this case, other countries, there are people both within Israel and outside of Israel who are uh, raising their voices, criticizing Netanyahu a lot. And I think that will continue into the next lunar month. But the main thing to be concerned about is that tensions in the Middle East don't escalate more than they already have. Uh, the stars put a certain influence out there, but it's people who make the decisions and who decide how to respond to the environment that they find themselves in. Astrology is just a weather report. It tells you what the weather's going to be. It's up to us to decide uh, how we are going to deal with the weather. So there are storms on the horizon, but they can be dealt with if the right decisions are made. Now, if we look at this graph of transits for the lunar month, we see that Neptune square Jupiter, that is increasing. It's going to become exact on March 25th. Now, all the tense aspects there, those that become exact, that's all happening in March. We have Saturn square Mercury on March 4th. Uranus coming into opposition to Chiron, but it's a growing influence. Doesn't become exact yet. Jupiter square Pluto, that is going to be exact on March 8th. Jupiter conjunct the North Node, stimulating that nodal axis, that's going to be exact on the 5th. When that nodal axis is stimulated, well, it's kind of close to the Sun Chiron opposition, so uh, stuff could happen. Uh, let's see, did I talk about Saturn, Jupiter square Saturn? I didn't mention it here. That takes place really in the next lunar month, but in that next lunar month, it will be exact on March 27th. And that is going to be some tension between uh, growth and restriction, between doing whatever you want and having to exert control and regulation of yourself. So, there are some dates in March you want to keep an eye on to see what happens with Israel. The good thing is there are a few good aspects too. Chiron trine the Sun, that's exact on February 11th. This can indicate some healing that's going on. Uh, the North Node trine Saturn, that is also good. Exact on the 22nd. This is a period in which maybe the Israeli government will show a little bit more restraint in some of its actions. Neptune trine the midheaven, that is a waning influence right now, but has provided some good things for Israel. Probably not all of the publicity about Israel has been bad. Other people have been pointing out what has been done to Israel, which has generated the response. So for a while, Israel may continue to have some magnetism over things. But things get a little bit more tense during March. They're a little bit more favorable during February. Okay, now let's take a look at Netanyahu. I'm going to take a little sip of water real quickly here. Netanyahu is also being affected by Chiron in ways. Transiting Chiron is very closely conjunct his lunar nodal axis right now. And it and the North Node, they stand in opposition to his moon, south lunar node, and Neptune. So this is, let's see, is this in his 10th house? 21st? No, that's going to be, yeah, that is in his 10th house. So uh, Netanyahu is going through political wounding now and maybe some personal wounding. And as Chiron moves into opposition to his moon, maybe even some personal illness. But certainly his public face, I think, is being tarnished at this point. So he has that to deal with. He also has transiting Saturn, square his natal Venus, Chiron, and ascendant, another indicator of personal wounding and frustration. He would do well to restrain himself so that others don't have to. Um, and let's see, transiting Uranus is squaring his Pluto. And let's see what I can see here. Pluto rules his 12th house. Hidden enemies, self-undoing. It's his 9th house, which, among other things, represents other countries. Uh, it's sort of the group mind, religion, thoughts of people in general, traveling to other places. And in this case, there might be some unexpected things happening related to other religions, other ideas, other countries, which can be detrimental to Netanyahu. He might also do some things to stab himself in the back. It might not be just others. So Netanyahu has some tensions going on this month, and that should come as no surprise. He is going to be experiencing frustration, wounding, and difficulties, maybe with some other people out there. Now, if we look at dates and times, uh, Chiron opposition Neptune, that's still in effect, but it's waning. Chiron conjunct the North Node, that'll be exact on the 18th. The North Node, transiting North Node, conjunct natal North Node, is exact on the 20th. So keep an eye on the news, see what's going on with Netanyahu around the 18th and 20th. Saturn is squaring Chiron. That is exact on February 9th, right when this lunar month begins. Okay. And then we also have North Node coming into opposition to Neptune. That's increasing in influence, becomes exact after this time period. Saturn squaring the ascendant, that will be exact on March 1st. Chiron opposition Moon, we start to see that coming into effect in March, but becomes exact after this period. Saturn squaring his natal Venus, That's actually going to be in the next lunar month, but happens, it'll be exact on March 21st. The influence will begin to be felt maybe in the last week of this lunar month. A few good aspects. Chiron trine his Pluto. That will help enhance his status and power. And there's also a Jupiter trine his Saturn, which is very good, but this all takes place during the next lunar month, which is why I didn't put a box around that. But that becomes exact on the 22nd. Again, you can see from March 15th to the 22nd, which is in the following lunar month, we have both some good things culminating and also some tense things culminating around the same time. So it can be a mixed bag. But for right now, in this month in February, he has uh, wounds and sorrows to deal with and frustrations. Okay, now let's see. Let's move on. Take a look at Hamas. When it comes to the chart for Hamas, we know when the organization began. We just don't know uh, what time. So I set up a chart for 12 p.m., but then I also just erected it with 0 degrees Aries rising. So it's very generic in that respect. But when we look at this chart, and this should come as no surprise, I see a lot of wounding for Hamas during this lunar month. We have Neptune, transing Neptune, making a square to Uranus, a natal Chiron. We have transiting Chiron, conjunct natal Jupiter, and square natal Venus. So that's all going to cause some wounding. We have transiting Saturn square natal Mercury. That creates frustrations. We have transiting Jupiter in opposition to this Mars Pluto conjunction and square their moon. This is going to uh, sort of fan the flames of their fanaticism and their tendency toward violence and destruction. And it's going to make probably people suffer. Okay, now if we look at dates and times for these transits, uh, Chiron square natal Venus, that's in effect throughout February, but it's waning. Neptune square Uranus and Chiron, that will be exact respectively on February 19th and 23rd. Uh, transiting North Node square Venus, that is increasing in effect. So things are going to get more intense personally for Hamas. Jupiter opposition Mars and Pluto. Those are exact around February 26th and March 1st. So I would keep an eye out to see what kind of violence they engage in during this last week of February and early March. Saturn's square Mercury, more frustrations. That becomes exact on the 7th. Uh, let's see, Neptune conjunct North Node. That starts to take effect in late February, increases in intensity, becomes exact beyond this date, this period. Jupiter square the moon, natal moon. That will be exact on March 18th, which is during the next lunar month. Chiron's conjunction with natal Jupiter. That will start about the time of the beginning of the next lunar month and become exact after this time period. Now, Hamas also has a few trines and sextiles, which will help him deal with some of the harsher things going on astrologically. So again, note these dates and times and keep an eye on what happens. Chiron trine Sun, that's been in effect. It becomes exact on March 11th, right about the time of the beginning of the next lunar month. So they will get some respite, some healing from some source. Uh, Neptune trine Sun, that was exact on February 4th and 5th, and it's waning in influence. Saturn sextile Neptune was exact on February 5th. It's fading. Jupiter trine Neptune, that is also fading. Uh, Growing is Saturn trine Mars. Uh, Unfortunately, this could make aggressive activities easier for them. So there might be something that happens where their discipline pays off from their perspective, but they wind up committing violence against others again. And on the 7th, that's when we have Saturn square Mercury. So they will probably be feeling very frustrated and maybe itching for a fight around this time. And then we also have Saturn making a trine to Pluto. That's exact on the 12th. That's going to be in effect last week of February and throughout much of March. The 12th is into the next lunar month, but this is control regulation working along with power, wherever that source of power is. Also happening in the next lunar month, so I don't have it marked over here, is Jupiter making a trine with Venus. That's when things could go their way, which usually means that they don't go well for the rest of the world. But this lunar month, I'm expecting to see some more wounding for Hamas, but later on, we may see retaliation and new attacks from Hamas. I hope not, but uh, that's a possibility. That's what they will be feeling like, even if it doesn't get carried out. And they will probably get some support from the usual supporters, which will make things a little easier for them. Okay, now let's take a look at Iran, because there's a lot of astrological indications that uh, would tend to draw Iran into this conflict a more direct way. And that's what we probably have to work to avoid, because if this becomes an all out war between the US and Iran in the Middle East, uh, yes, we could bomb Iran into oblivion, but uh, in the long run, there would probably be no winners from such a war, from such a conflict. But here's what's going on this lunar month. Uh, Transiting Chiron is in opposition to natal Chiron, and that is going to uh, simply increase in intensity over the next couple of months. So there could be wounding of various sorts for Iran. Transiting Pluto is in opposition to Jupiter. Jupiter is the fourth house, that's the homeland. Pluto is in the 10th house. Pluto is very death and destruction, totalitarian. Either Iran's leaders could impose new hardships among the people, or other countries might be responsible for a lot of hardship or death and destruction of Iranians. Transiting Saturn is in opposition to natal Saturn. Iran is having to face the consequences of its actions these days. The karmic bill is due. Transiting Mars is square the ascendant. They're going to be feeling very warlike. They might be beating the drums of war. Uh, Transiting Uranus, opposition to natal Uranus. There's some sort of shakeup going on, particularly in their relationships with others. Is that going to work in our advantage? Are they going to break up with Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis, or are they going to go in a different direction? break up with the rest of the world even more. And of course, transiting Jupiter is square their natal moon, and that can cause some difficulties for the people when it comes to growth and expansion. Okay, gonna take another quick little sip of water here. And we can look at dates and times for uh, the things which are tense. All the exact dates we see are occurring in March. Pluto in opposition to Jupiter exact on March 25th. Uranus, opposition Uranus exact after this period. Chiron, opposition Jupiter. That really starts to kick in at the end of February. And I think, I say Jupiter, I meant Chiron, opposition Pluto. That can cause a lot of wounding, and this will go into April. So in March and April, uh, we have to keep an eye on what happens with Iran. Uh, things could become more intense. Jupiter square moon becomes exact on March 10th, right at the beginning of the next lunar month. Saturn opposition Saturn, that becomes exact on March 18th, which will be into the next lunar month. Jupiter's square Mars, I don't have a box around this one because it's outside of this current lunar month, but it will be exact on March 30th. So, we're seeing tensions build with respect to Iran, and there is a great possibility that they will build even further. So let's pray that diplomats on both sides do a good job to reduce tensions and to keep this from expanding into a wider war, because the potential for that is frankly increasing right now. Now, Iran does have some good aspects which are going to help out. Transing Chiron sextile Mars exact on the 23rd. North Node sextile Mars exact on the 12th. A few waning aspects that are good. Uranus trine North Node, Saturn sextile Venus, Saturn sextile it's the ascendant. That is good for concentration focus for Iran. That is exact on February 8th, right before the beginning of the lunar month. Jupiter trine Saturn, that is going to be in effect in the last week of February and the first half of March, exact on March 4th. This is a good thing. This shows a balance between growth and regulation. So maybe Iran will stay in balance. Maybe they will talk to Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, get them to dial back their attacks so that they won't get attacked themselves. That is hopes that is what happens. And lastly, let's take a look at Vladimir Putin. I'm going to need another sip of water for this one. Here's another one of those in danger of being wounded by Chiron. Transing Chiron and the North Node are now opposite his Sun, Saturn, and Neptune, which are mostly in the 12th house. And Chiron's going through a 6th house. We've heard lots of rumors of illness. He probably does have some health problems. They may worsen this month, and he could get wounding from other sources also. Transiting Uranus, let's see, it is going to be conjunct his Jupiter, square Pluto, the lunar nodal axis, and his midheaven. There is astrologically this push out there for changes in Putin's status, his leadership. And this has been kind of going on for a while. Uh, The square was pretty active last summer when Prigozhin marched on Moscow and challenged Putin. And we're going to see it having an impact again. So there are people both within Russia and outside of Russia who would like to see Putin out of power. That pressure is there. Will it be enough to get him out? It's hard to say. He's got a firm grip on the reins of power, it seems, and uh, he has the resources to help him survive both politically and in terms of health. But the pressures are there. Now, we also have Neptune squaring natal Mars. Always a possibility of assassination when you see something like that. Perhaps what's more likely is delusional thinking making him very angry. And let's see, we have transing Jupiter opposite natal Venus. So the decisions of others, the actions of others are not going to sit well with him. He is going to be feeling rather disturbed. Venus represents, in addition to being the drive to reduce tensions, it represents our right brain, our nonverbal brain. And with his Venus in Scorpio, he has very strong feelings about certain things. Now, the last thing I have here is transiting Pluto, square natal ascendant. And let's see, he's got Pluto is at 1+ degrees Aquarius, his ascendant at 3+ degrees Scorpio. Pluto is death and transformation. The ascendant is how we see ourselves and subsequently how a lot of other people see us. And so this denotes some big transformation of self, even death. This is not going to become exact this year, but in 2025 and 2026, it will be an exact square 5 times. Because of that and other things going on astrologically with Putin and Russia, I'm pretty sure that just about all astrologers expect him to be out of power and gone before the end of 2026. He could even be forced out of power this year. But there are certainly a lot of tensions that push in that direction. But like I say, he has a lot of resources, he has a lot of protection, so he could very well stay in control. But this month, a lot of wounding and frustration for Putin. Now, this will give us dates and times. Chiron in exact opposition to Saturn, March 5th. North Node opposition natal Saturn, February 7th. Um, let's see, Neptune square Mars, that is exact on the 23rd. So keep an eye on the news around that time. Uranus conjunct Jupiter, that's going to be exact on the 6th. And let's go back. We saw that Chiron opposition Saturn was exact on the 5th. So early March, March 5th and 6th, those could be important dates. And I'll also jump down here and note that Jupiter is in opposition to Venus on March 3rd. So that's when stuff could really happen with respect to Putin, that first week of March. Uranus square the North Node, that's exact on March 13th. Chiron square Uranus, that is going to be exact on March 22nd. That's in the next lunar month. Let me take a little quick look at that. Let's see, that was Chiron square Uranus. Where's his Uranus? That's going to be in the 9th house. So, some sort of wounding here going on. Uranus, uh, ah, that rules Aquarius, which is on the cusp of his 4th house, which represents his home and also the homeland. So, wounding for both personal home and the homeland, is responsible by March 22nd as a result of Chiron square Uranus. And then we also had a Pluto square ascendant that begins to build in March. And in 2025, 2026, it will become an exact square 5 times. So uh, a lot of personal changes for Putin coming ahead. He doesn't have a lot of beneficial sextiles and trines to help him out. He has Uranus sextile natal Uranus. That's influence is waning. He has Saturn's sextile Chiron. That's exact on the 6th and then waning. Pluto trine Moon. That will start to build in mid-February. Go through all of March, becomes exact after this time period. Saturn square Venus. That is in effect mostly in March, becomes exact on the 15th. And that will be, however, during the next lunar month. So we may say a little bit more about that then. But this will be uh, a very beneficial aspect for Putin since he has Venus in the first house, Saturn control and regulation. So there's a lot of tensions and stresses out here, particularly in March. Saturn trine Venus, that may help him retain control. Okay, and I think that is it for this slideshow. We went through it kind of quickly, but you can always go through it, pause, look at things, look at dates and times, and then keep an eye on the news to see what happens. Anyway, let me stop sharing. Okay, that's going to be it. That's the end of this little slideshow. Hope you enjoyed it. And like I said, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on dates and times to see what happens with particular countries and particular people, and just see how this all works out in a real world sense. Until then, I'll say so long and be well as I sign off, and I hope you join me again for some more videos. So long.